Hello everyone, this is Allison from the Multimedia Development Center here in IIT, and today I will be giving a video tutorial on how to make a wide format poster using PowerPoint, specifically for Office 2008 on the Mac side. That's pretty specific. There are some overlapping features between the different versions, including from PC to Mac and from 2008 to older versions, but this is pretty specific, so if you're planning on doing one of these, you might want to get to a school computer and use the Mac side and their version of Office because it has a lot of good features and it can really make things easier for you. So the very first thing I'm going to do is create a new folder. It could be anywhere, I'm just going to do it on the desktop for easy purposes, and I'm just going to call it PowerPoint Poster. And this is where you're going to save your poster, all your images, all your charts, all your related documents, just so that your PowerPoint is very portable and nothing is going to get lost. So then you can go ahead and you can start PowerPoint. So here you have an empty document, and what you're going to want to do, well, first of all, I'm going to close this little pane here because we're not going to need it. We only have one slide, which is going to be our poster. And you're going to go File, Page Setup. So this is where we're going to size it to whatever size you need it to be. We're going to go with a standard poster size. Your teachers might tell you something different, but for now let's have it go 48 by 36. So it's going to be custom landscape, that's going to do it for you, and say OK. If it warns you about printable areas, then you can just say OK because you're going to be printing it with someone who has a printer big enough, most likely. So you can just say OK. And now it's much bigger even if it doesn't look it. And now you can delete this little box here and this one here. They're not going to be useful. Next, right away you're going to say File, Save As, and you're going to go to that folder that you created and you're going to save it in there as something very specific. You're probably going to be saving different versions of this along the way, so it's good to come up with a good naming system. So for this I'm going to say Tutorial Poster 1. It'll ask you what format you want to save it in. This PPTX is for the newer versions of PowerPoint, and it gives you the option of just PPT, which is 2004 back to 97. You can save it as either one, but while you have the option, I would actually recommend this newer version. And if you're printing with someone who needs an older version, then you can save it as that, and it might make things not editable anymore, as if you had maybe a table and you can edit it in many ways in this version, but if you save it as a just PPT, then you may not be able to do that anymore because it just turns it into a picture or something like that. So I would recommend saving it in this actually, so I'm going to resave that. Alright, so now we have our blank slate, and one of the first things you can do if you want is you can give it a slide background color. Now depending on who you print with, you may not be able to do this. If you print with the Multimedia Development Center, you can have solid color backgrounds, but if you print with a department printer, you may not be able to do that because it uses a lot of ink and they don't always like that. But if you do want to add a slide background color, you'll go up to Format and say Slide Background. And here you can choose many different colors, and what you're going to want is a very light, unsaturated color. So you don't want any of these down here, most likely down here either. You're going to want up on the top, or if you want to be way more specific, you can go to More Colors. And you'll have this whole color wheel, and you'll have a bunch of options for choosing colors. You'll probably want this one, because you can get really specific. And you're going to want to stay in the middle of this circle, and choose a very light color. Maybe a light green and a light blue is very popular. And on this slider here you can change how dark that is. But you're going to want it pretty light. So I'm going to go with that one. And I'm going to say apply because I like how that looks. Alright, so next we're going to give it a title. So we're going to go up here to a text box, or you can say insert text box, either one. And you can draw it however long you want it to be. And for a title on this size of poster, these font sizes may change if you have different size posters because you're going to want everything to fit nicely. But for this size, about 100 is going to look pretty good. And for titles and headings, it's nice to have a font like Times New Roman versus Arial, which has very little decoration. Times New Roman has all these little flourishes on the ends of their letters. So for the body text you're going to want something like Arial, but for the titles it can be nice to have a change of pace and have something like Times New Roman. So over here you have a bunch of little panels that you can use to format your text in these boxes. I'm going to make use of this alignment and spacing one and make it centered for my title. And here I can just start typing, so I'm going to call this Wide Format Poster Tutorial. And it's beautiful, very nice. Now you're not going to want to forget to give your name under that. So once again, another text box, draw it right underneath that little one. You can see a little line appears beneath that title. That can shows you that it's aligning, that the top of this new text box and the bottom of the title are lining up, which is nice. And for this I'm going to want to go a little bit smaller, so we're going to say maybe 72. And I'll center that again, say my name, and you might have to add your faculty name as well if you worked with them. So now we have a basic title, and we're going to be adding to the body now. So for the body, it's very common to have 3 columns of boxes going down, one right, one middle, and one left. So we're going to have a new text box here. We're going to draw it about 1/3 of the way. You don't have to guess exact right now. And we're going to want this to be a header first of all, so we're going to center it again. And as I said, for headers and titles I like to have Times New Roman or something like it. And let's just call this abstract, because a lot of people have that on their poster. Now, when you make columns of text boxes, it's important to have all the boxes in that column be the same width, right? And that can be a little tricky, but there are a couple of ways to deal with that. One way is that you can just take a box that you've already made, and you can right-click on its border here, and you can just copy it, or you can do the shortcut for it on your keyboard, and then just paste it. And then you magically have a second box of the same width. And you can see these little lines are helping me align it directly beneath this header that I just made. So this can be my body box, which is the exact same width. So I'll just change the alignment, and I'll make the body probably around 48. And I don't want this to be Times New Roman anymore, because it's our header and title font, so we're going to use this theme body Calibri, which is a lot like Arial. And here you can just type whatever you want. I'm just going to go ahead and make up a paragraph or so. La 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 la. Beautiful. Okay. So that's a nice little body box here with a header. I really like the look of having these separated more. So what I might do is I'll select both of these by first clicking on this header box, holding down Shift, and clicking on this body box, and then they'll both be selected. And then I'm going to either double click on this border or right click and say Format Object. And it's going to give me all these options and all these little tabs for each option. And for this one I want to mess with the lines. So right now it doesn't have a line, as you can see. It doesn't have a border around it. So I'm going to go ahead and give it one. I'm going to make it a darker blue to kind of match with the theme of the background. I'm going to say OK. So now there's a little border around it, which is very nice. I kind of like that. As you can see, they're kind of skewed, so something really handy about this version of PowerPoint is that once again you can select both objects by clicking on one object, holding Shift, and clicking on the other. And then you can go down here to Size, Rotation, and Ordering, and it'll have a neat little thing called Align. And what you can do here is you can align different objects to the left, center, right, top, bottom, however you want. So I'm going to line this on the left, and now magically they're lined up perfect, which is very nice, a very nice feature to have. And if you want to just make sure that maybe this text box is in the middle, the exact middle of your poster, you can go Align and just Align to Slide. So instead of selected objects, it'll just be the slide, and you can say Align Center, and aha, I found the center of my poster. I'm going to do that for the same one. And so that's how you can use Align to really make your poster look pretty nice. Now I don't really want this gap in between the header and the body boxes here, so I'm going to grab this bottom one. And you can use the arrow keys to make very small adjustments to the placing of your object. So I'm just going to tap the up arrow on my keyboard. It's going to shift it ever so slightly up so that there's no line in between there, and our borders match up. One other thing you can do if you want is you can give these two boxes different background colors from the base background color. So I'm going to do that. What I usually like to do is have the background of the slide be the lightest, this header be the darkest, and the body boxes be in the middle somewhere. So I'm going to double click this thing. You could also right click and say Format Object. And instead of line, I'm going to go to Fill, and I'm going to choose a somewhat dark color. Let's see if this one works. Yeah, I like the look of that. So it's somewhat darker, but you do not want it to be that dark that when it prints, you're not going to be able to read that black text on it. So still don't go too saturated like say these ones, and also maybe not the bottom of here, but not too light either. So I'm going to say OK. And same thing here, double click on this border and do something in between like that. Now if you want to get more specific, once again you can go to more colors, and I'm going to ease this up a little bit. Like that. And see how that looks. There. And say OK. And there you can have a nice kind of contrast between your colors. Once again, to make the other boxes, I'm going to copy these two because they're all nice and together and formatted with the right colors and such, so I don't have to repeat this process. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And here I have another version all ready for me. Just drag it down, and now I'm going to have the beginning of my left column of boxes. And let's just call this, oops, I'll call this Setup, because why not? And let's say I have a bit more text. This is a really intelligent poster. Okay, and then maybe one more, I'll paste one more of that instance for finishing my column here. And I'll call this questions. And let's say I want this to be more like a list, so I'm going to go ahead and go over here, say bullets and numbering. I'll make a numbered list, and I'll say something 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 question mark, something 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 question mark, and something 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 question mark. And if you want to mess with the tabbing and the spaces between here like you might in Word, you can go up to View and say Ruler, and then these things pop up on the top and the left, and you can go on these text boxes and see that Word-like formatting, so you can scooch these over if you want. I like what they made by default just fine, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So now I'm going to select all these holding Shift while I click on every part, copy it and paste it. Oh bother, I just deselected them all. Be sure to grab on the borders of the text boxes when you want to move them around instead of edit them. So I'll bring it over here on the right, and I'm going to paste one more instance and put it here in the middle. So here we have the very basic format of our 3-column poster. Now you're going to want to go ahead and select all these and make sure that they're all nice and perfectly in the middle. So we can select all these and go to Align, Align Center, and that'll move it over. And then you're going to want, of course, these spaces between here to be about the same, so you can eyeball those. Another way to select everything, if you can, is just drag a box around all the objects that you want. And that'll be nice. Now I'll just arrow over gradually and just kind of eyeball it, and that looks pretty good. Another way, if you don't have the handy-dandy Align palette over here, to line up all these boxes is to double-click on a box, and it'll have these options down here, size and position. And these can be really handy. So on the size, it'll tell you the exact height and width of these boxes. So what you can do is you can just copy this one, copy this number, and then go to the body, and you can paste that figure in there. In this case it's already the same because I just copied and pasted the whole thing. And similarly for the position, if you want it to be the same horizontal placement, you can just copy this figure and post it right here again, and it'll be the exact same. So that's if you don't want to use that align feature all the time, and it's really precise and nice. So as you can see, I've made some changes to the formatting. I thought I'd spare you that process since it was really just adding or deleting some text to give the boxes some variety and renaming the headings. As you can see, I have a couple of spaces in here, and that's because I think we should probably start adding some pictures and figures, since no one likes to look at just text, right? So let's say we want to add a picture. We'll go online, and most likely you're gonna go the Google route, right? So go to Images, and let's say we want to look for pictures of setup. Now I'll give you this whole list of images, but we really have to be careful because these posters are going to be quite large. So these pictures are going to have to be quite large unless they get expanded so much that they start to look really pixely and just a bad resolution. So we're going to specify how big we want these to be. So we go over here on the side and we want to specify large. And you can get more specific than that by going down here, but usually large will do the job. So let's see, this one looks pretty good. It's got a good size there, so we'll click on this one. It's a couple 100 kilobytes, which is good. You probably wouldn't want to get much smaller than this, but you definitely want it in the hundreds range. So we'll get the full-size image, and instead of dragging and dropping, we're going to save this into that folder that we created before. I'll call this picture 1. Should probably call it something more detailed than that, but for our purposes it'll be just fine. And then we'll go back into our presentation and we'll go to Insert Picture. And we will navigate to that folder that we created, and here's my picture 1. We will insert it. That's pretty big, it's not bad. So we'll just shrink this, and you have to be a little bit careful when you resize pictures because you'll notice that you can grab these and it'll stretch it out and it'll look really ugly and distorted. So I'm going to undo that by going Command Z. And if you want to constrain the proportions of the size you're imaging, and otherwise not distort it, you're going to hold down Shift and grab it by one of the corners and drag it down. So that'll keep the proportions for you, the height to width ratio. And I'll just drop this in place right there. That'll look pretty nifty. And of course you want to give captions to your figures, so I'll add a little guy right there. And this I'm going to make 28. I'll call it Figure A Setup. Drag that down so it aligns nicer. And there we go. So something you might notice is that when we drag this picture in, it has this white background around it, which gives it a really boxy look. And it'd be pretty nice if we could just have this light blue background come up all around until the edges of the part of the picture that matters, right? So what you can do with PowerPoint that's really nice is you can click on this guy and you'll see this palette come up right here. And you have like a mini Photoshop kind of in this palette here where you can do a lot of things. If you want, you can adjust the brightness and the contrast and the transparency, and you have all these effects and such like that. But for what I'm talking about, we're going to go to transparent color. There's this little button, and it'll give you an arrow. And this little arrow, you can click on a color that you want to become transparent, so the white. And there you go. It takes that part out and leaves the blue background behind it and makes it look pretty spiffy there. So another way to do that without messing with transparency colors, if that's not going to work out, is you can refine your search to PNGs. PNGs are like JPEGs, normal image file types, but they retain transparency in the background. They have what's called an alpha channel that they maintain. So let's find a good one here. I like this one. That'll be good. And this is a PNG. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save this into that folder I created. Insert it here. And as you can see, it already has this transparency where the white was. So that's another way to do it if you can refine your search to PNG files. So one last type of graphic that we might want is a chart. So you can either create charts within PowerPoint itself, or if you've already made one in Excel, you can bring it over from there. So let's try and do both. First we'll create one starting from PowerPoint, and it will open Excel anyway, but it's still through PowerPoint. So we can go Insert Chart, and it'll ask you what type it is up here. You have a ton of options, 5 pages of options, so let's just choose this one for kicks and giggles. And it will open Excel here. Alright, so it's created some dummy data here in this Excel sheet, and if you move this aside, you can see it's already created a graph for this data in PowerPoint. And if you choose to edit some of this data, or make your own, you'll see that after a slight delay it'll change it automatically, live you might say, in this chart, which is pretty nice. You can see exactly what it's going to look like at any time. So as soon as you think that's done, you can say, okay, I'm done with you. Go back to here, and you have your wonderful chart. And the great thing about this is that you can still edit it. You can see these little boxes show up around what I click on, which means that I can edit these by double clicking on them. And then I have all these little options if I want to change the colors or the lines or how it looks in any other way. And that's a really great feature of this new version of PowerPoint. But let's just say I like how it looks this way. I don't want to change anything, so I'll cancel out of there. And once again, holding Shift to constrain the proportions of this figure, I'm going to go to the right corner and drag down to make it fit. And make sure you grab this border, because if you try and grab on the inside, you'll end up changing one of your values or your bars. And that ought to fit pretty good. In fact, I'll even shrink this a bit so that it fits my column, because that always looks nice. And then I'm going to copy this little text box here to maintain the formatting of my captions. And I'll call this, whoops, double clicked on the border there. If you ever need to zoom in more to get exactly what you want, you can go up to this percentage thing, and you can zoom way in if you want. Oh, look at that, I spelled setup wrong. For goodness sakes. So this will be chart, and then I'll zoom back to fit. So let's say that now we want to bring in a figure that we've already made in Excel. So I whipped up a phony little data chart here. I'll go up to charts, and let's say I want one of these types, and I'll generate that for me. So what I can do is I can just copy, and then you can just paste. And here it is, and it's likewise just as editable. You can see I can select the individual parts of it, and I can alter those however I want, just like before in this one. It's just a different way of going about it if you've already made it. But it's about the same thing, so I'm just going to get rid of that one for now. So there you have it. You have a large format poster with text boxes and pictures and charts, and it looks beautiful, and it's ready for print. The only other things that you can do if you want to include the St. Olaf logo or maybe your department logo on the sides, that's certainly welcome. A lot of people do that. If you are in need of the St. Olaf logo, do not go to the website and just drag it from there, because it's tiny and not nearly high resolution enough for you to be printing it out large scale. So if you need it, you can email the MDC at mdc@stoloff.edu, and we can send it to you, as we have a very large version of it ourselves, which I've already put in here for us. And that's going to go perfect, lined up right about there, and it'll look pretty classy, especially if you have a matching graphic, maybe your department logo over here on the other side too. So there you have it. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. We are located in the IIT at the very back, 270 in Rolvag Library. And thank you very much for listening to this tutorial, and happy poster making!